So, hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Full Throttle. And for the first episode of Full Throttle, what I like to do is to talk about uh, Ayrton Senna. Today is May the 1st, so a lot of years ago, 1994, we lost Ayrton. And what I would really like to do is basically not just trying to tell you the story. You probably know the story. Uh, you probably have seen a lot of movies, documentaries, video on YouTube or in any other place in the web that tell you the story about Ayrton championship races and fantastic um, victories that he had in his career. So what I really would like to do is just talk about memories that I have uh, on Ayrton, right? And Full Throttle is a show that just aim to talk about Formula One from, I would say, from the perspective of a Formula One fan, first of all, and also as you can see, uh, just behind me from a Ferrari fan perspective, right? And this is really important actually if you want to understand, you know, how this episode is going to be. I mean, what I'm trying to explain is uh, you will find a lot of people that talking about Ayrton will tell you uh, that they really loved Ayrton for the very first time. They really were their fans. They always rooted for him. Well, actually, at least talking from again a Ferrari fan perspective, what I can say is that we really loved Ayrton as a driver. We had no doubt that he was one of the best driver that we ever had in the history of Formula One. But again, as a Ferrari fan, uh, there is just there is also the rivalry. So we saw him as a rival, as a Ferrari rival. And yes, of course, a lot of people will tell you that um, they really hoped in that era that Ayrton was coming to Ferrari. And actually, yes, probably we always hoped, and all of us always hoped that. Um, but again, I don't like when people just tell you that side of the story. There's another side of the story, which is, again, memories of a rivalry. So I also want to, talk about that because it's important. And so, talking about rivalries, talking about what was my feeling of Ayrton, I remember, again, this is something really weird and but actually true. If I close my eyes, the first thing that I remember was actually, I think, two things. The first one was um, Monza in 1988 when he was already a McLaren driver. So after the Lotus era, and he was fighting for the championship with Alain Prost in 1988. The rivalry was not that huge at the moment. There was a healthy rivalry. Alain had a problem with the engine in Monza, so Ayrton was you know uh, ahead and he was leading the race. But I remember like 2 or 3 laps to go, he had an incident with Schlesser, who was driving the Williams, substituting Nigel Mansell in that year. So he retired from the race because of that incident. And actually, uh, the outcome of that incident was that Ferrari had a 1-2 in Monza, the only victory of Ferrari that year, and actually the only victory of another team except for McLaren in that year. So in 16 races, they won 15 races, and just Ferrari won in Monza. And actually, again, I remember the crowd that time. I really remember the crowd that time when Senna retired, and he actually deserved so much that victory. But again, in the end, when you want to win, and you are a Ferrari fan, and you're not winning a lot especially that year. Actually, what's really interesting for you is just winning the race. So I remember the first memory that I have talking about Ayrton was actually his retirement in Monza. And again, this is, I mean, in a way, the measure and the metrics of his highness. Actually, um, he was some sort of royal highness in Formula One, because when you are so strong, you also have enemies in a way, right? You have people that respect you, but it's like when the underdog wins, right? So when you win so much, I mean, there's a lot of people that actually start rooting for the others because they are the underdogs, because they are tired of seeing you winning so much, right? So when I think about that specific memory, actually what comes in my mind is he was so great that when he had that retirement, that incident, we were, I mean, we went crazy because of that. Uh, uh, we went really mad. The second memory that comes up in my mind is basically um, the following year in 1989. The rivalry was a lot hard between Ayrton and Alain. And I remember I was watching the German Grand Prix in 1989, and there was a fight between Ayrton and Alain. And actually, I remember I was with my family, and we are all huge fans in Formula One of Formula One. And at that time there were a lot of rumors about Alain Prost coming to Ferrari the following year, which actually happened at the end. So let me say that a lot of people from Ferrari, from the Ferrari fans and from the Ferrari audience and so on, they were, I mean, a lot of people were rooting for Alain Prost, because if Alain won the championship, um, we had the number one in our cars the following year. So we were rooting for that. So actually, what happened? I remember the German Grand Prix. There were, I think, there was a close fight between the two guys, and I remember that I was watching the Grand Prix at the seaside, in the camping, and there were so many fans, so many Italian fans, watching the Grand Prix, and they were all rooting for Alain Prost. And actually, let me say that officially I was rooting for Alain Prost as well, because what I just said. But I really remember that in the end, I don't know. I mean, in my mind, there was like a voice, like a small voice that was keep saying, "Yes, but Ayrton is so good. In this race, Ayrton is so good. He deserved the victory. So I mean, he should win. I mean, he deserved it. Uh, let's hope for it." And I was feeling, I mean, again, and probably I'm telling you this story because I really want to understand. I want you to understand that um, I think that the truth uh, from a Ferrari fan perspective is actually exactly like that. He was a rival. He was probably the best driver in the starting grid in that era. Uh, he did a lot of masterpieces. If you look at, I don't know, Donington 1993 and other races, he did so many great things and great races. But at the same time, we were rooting usually for someone else. Uh, for example, for Alain Prost, because we knew that Alain was coming to Ferrari. And so I think that a lot of Ferrari fans, and again, this is, I mean, Full Throttle as a TV show, as a web TV show, is about, you know, talking about Formula One and Formula One stories from a Ferrari fan point of view, and I want to be super clear on that. And I think that's the interesting, actually, the interesting part of this show, and that's why I wanted to do that. Um, and again, from a Ferrari fan perspective, yes, probably we officially were rooting against him because it's true. I mean, I was there. I was, in circuits in Italy, in France, in Germany, even if I was a kid, but I really remember it because I started, going to races very early in my life. I was 4 years old when I started going to races with my father, and I really remember that. So actually, if you find an Italian guy that tells you that he was a Ferrari fan, but he rooted for Ayrton, I'm not sure he's telling the true story. What's true, by the way, is that probably, I mean, officially he was not rooting for Ayrton, but inside he understood that he deserved everything he had, everything he achieved in his life, and probably a lot more. He deserved a lot more than what he achieved, actually. So really, again, what I'm really trying to what I'm really trying to say is that Ayrton was, yeah, for many of you, like a god. Actually, he was a driver. He was a human. He made mistakes as everybody. Sometimes he also did some, uh, dirty moves. Uh, just think about Suzuka 1990, right? Yes, he was like his revenge to Alain Prost, but actually, he's a dirty move. That's a dirty move. That's dirty movement. Um, it's just something that you shouldn't do. Um, and that's not the only episode, right? But again, I mean, it's like Michael Schumacher. If you want to win, you also have to sometimes sometimes be a dirty driver, a dirty racer. And I think it's important to say that because what I really don't like is this, approach of telling you a story that he only had positive sides, and actually, it's not true. He was a superstar. He was a fantastic driver. He was probably one of the best. Well, he was one of the best for sure. Maybe the best, even it's probably impossible to compare all the drivers in the whole history of Formula One. But I think that's also interesting, again, to talk about the downsides of um, his job and his role in Formula One. One of these downsides actually is that it's not true that everybody rooted for him. It's not true that everybody was a fan of Ayrton. I really like him and I miss him. And I remember exactly this image um, in Imola 1994. I remember that I think it was like 6 p.m. in the afternoon, and we were all watching TV, try to understand you know uh, how hard was the the situation for him, uh, if he was able to live, uh, and trying to understand all the information and all the news that were coming from the hospital in Bologna. And I remember that at 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m., something like that. Uh, the news of his death was official, and that's strange. But I started crying suddenly, just right after hearing the doctor saying Ayrton Senna's death. Uh, I started crying suddenly, immediately, just like this. And I think that I think that uh, uh, that's exactly what I was trying to say. Uh, he was a rival. He never he was he has never been a Ferrari driver. So for most of the time, I saw him as a rival, as I would say an enemy, even if it's not uh, the right word, right? Uh, so again, you felt that he was a superhero, but he was a rival. So you always had this uh, fight inside, and probably what happened um, that day when uh, at some point the doctor said Ayrton Senna's death. What happened inside me was actually what I think happened to a lot of other people, a lot of other Ferrari fans, a lot of other Formula One fans that maybe rooted for Alain Prost or rooted for Ferrari, or German people that they maybe were cheering Michael Schumacher at that time, who was leading the championship in that year, or maybe to Brazilian fans that were rooting for Nelson Piquet in the past. And as you know, there was a rivalry uh, between Nelson and Ayrton as well, like a strange rivalry and weird rivalry with weird words, with a lot of jokes, very dirty jokes between the two, right? You can do an episode just on that. I think that again the important thing to understand is you could love him. It very it's I don't think that there were people that hate him. Maybe you wouldn't love him, but definitely he was so important, so uh, like a definition of Formula One racing for that era. He was the definition of Formula One races in that era. That when suddenly he died, we simply, we simply understood that we had lost something, and something inside us. Again, even from a Ferrari fan perspective. And again, I really don't trust too much when people say, "Oh, I would really have loved to see Ayrton and Ferrari because he was the god and so on." Yes, I mean, I really would. I mean, if Ayrton would have come to Ferrari, it would be great. But I mean, once again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that people are super, super, super um, transparent when they say, "I always wanted him to come to Ferrari." But anyway, in any case, I think that I wasn't the only one crying as a baby that afternoon. And it's not just a matter of we had a very, complicated weekend because of the Barrichello incident, because of the Roland Ratzenberger death the previous day on Saturday. I think that really we started crying because we understood we simply lost one of the greatest driver we ever seen in the history of Formula One, in the history of human being. And I think we're missing so much. Anyway, even if I was rooting for Ferrari and he was rival, he was one of the best rivals that we ever had, and we miss him a lot. So I think this is the end of the first episode. I hope you enjoy it. Uh, we will have some more episode starting from now. Thank you for watching and stay safe. Bye.